2 Samuel, the 18th chapter. I've entitled this chapter, The Revenge Against Absalom. The Revenge Against Absalom. Now, let's go back just for a moment or two and let's ask a couple of questions. Who has overthrown the capital city of Jerusalem? Absalom. And Absalom has had two individuals as counselors tell him to do certain things. Who are those two individuals? Okay, one of them is who? Ahithophel. Ahithophel was whose counselor at one time? David's. He considered him a very close friend. He betrayed him, went over to the side of Absalom, and he gave counsel to Absalom. Who was the other one? Yes, a man by the name of Hushai. And Hushai was an implant, was he not? He was implanted by who? By David. And he told Hushai, you go to the capital, you stay there with Absalom, and you are to do what? Overthrow the counsel of Ahithophel. Okay? So both of these individuals have counseled Absalom. What was Ahithophel's counsel the very night of the overthrow? Yes, go right now, get 12,000 men, kill just David, and the hearts of the people will be on your side. Okay? What was Hushai's counsel? Okay, don't go right now. Wait a little while. David will be in hiding. You won't get him tonight. And when he finally gets into a city, then we can send a group of individuals against the city, and then we can get him, right? Now, at the end of the chapter last time, we were a little bit confused as to whose counsel had been accepted, weren't we? And the confusion came from two things. Number one, Hushai immediately sends a message to David and tells him what? Yeah, you need to hurry up, get out of the wilderness, cross over the river as fast as you can. Well, that sounds as if whose counsel is being accepted? Sounds like Ahithophel's counsel. Okay? Go right now, right? You better get out of Dodge because if you don't, it's going to be bad, right? But there was some confusion because did Ahithophel believe his counsel had been accepted?
No, he didn't.
Why? How do we know that?
Because he killed himself.
Yes, because he killed himself because his counsel was rejected. Okay? So, at the conclusion of the last chapter, it's very difficult to tell whether it was Hushai's counsel that was accepted or whether it was Ahithophel's counsel that was accepted. But you get into chapter 18, and guess what I believe? I didn't say what you believe. Guess what I believe? I believe it's very clear whose counsel was accepted. And guess whose it was? Hushai's. Okay? And I believe there's some evidences in this chapter that point in that direction. Okay? And we'll talk about them as we get there. But let's get a brave volunteer to outline this chapter for us. Anyone? All right, Jim raised his hand. Point number one, Jim. Okay, David divides people into three groups. Number two. The people will not let David go to battle. Number three. David tells the people to deal gently with Absalom. Israel under Absalom loses 20,000 men. That's point number four. Number five. Absalom slain. Number six. Absalom's burial. Wow. All right. Simple outline. Folks, if you were to read the chapter, take Jim's points, guess what you would do? You would understand each one of those sections, wouldn't you? This is what happens in each one of those sections. Very brief one of mine. David organizes his army. Number two, the people oppose David's involvement. Number three, David orders his commanders about Absalom. Number four, David overcomes Israel. Number five, Joab overthrows Absalom. And number six, Absalom offers little in death. Okay, so we'll get into the questions. True or false? David numbered the people that were with him. True. And David numbered the people that were with him. Is this the first indication that a little bit of time has passed? and that David isn't that concerned about an immediate destruction? Yeah. Folks, if he's got time to number his army, then that tells me what? He's not that concerned about dying right now, that very night. Okay? Now, why did David number his people? Very good. Folks, David is a military commander, is he not? He's commanded armies almost all of his life from a very young age. After he had destroyed Goliath, he was immediately put into positions of power among the armies of Israel and rose to great positions as far as commander is concerned. And now he's the what? Or was until the overthrow. He was the king. He was over all the armies, was he not? He was what some referred to as the Lord of hosts within the nation. So David knew how to fight. But in order to fight, you have to organize, don't you? And in order to organize properly, you've got to know how many commanders and know how many soldiers that are at your disposal. So he counts the people. Josephus says that there were around 4,000 that were with David at this time. Anybody know who Josephus is? Yeah. He is a Jewish historian, okay? And individuals put a lot of credence in Josephus. Josephus says that there are around 4,000 individuals with David at this time. I don't know where he came up with that number necessarily, okay? There are others, however, who believe that there were probably more like 12,000 at least that were with David. And that's because of something that is said in the text, and we'll get to it in just a little bit. Jim, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say that he organized them into captains of thousands, captains of hundreds.
Yep.
And then 3 grand men will make it at least 3,000 people.
Yep. That's the reason Josephus, throws it up there, 4,000. But how you don't know that exactly. It'd just be hard to tell. But again, David has time to count the people, to number the people, to get himself organized. So he's not fearful of just an immediate overthrow, okay? So I believe that we can see that Hushai's counsel is being the one followed. Who did David set as captains over these armies? Who did David set captains over? I'm sorry. Yes, thousands and hundreds, okay? And set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Folks, efficiency in an organization is the success of an organization. If you are not efficient, then guess what? You will not be effective. And David understood that. And so you divide your armies, you set commanders over them, and which is easier to command, a small number or a large number? A small number, okay? And that's the reason that top-down government is very difficult to manage, okay? When you're trying to manage, the entire population of the United States, 330 million people, that's difficult from way up top, okay? But if you divide it into 50 states, into cities and towns, then it's much easier for those individuals to govern themselves, isn't it? And you do that a lot more efficiently and effectively. And so we see that even way back there in Bible times. Between what 3 men did David divide the people? Joab, Abishai, and who? Ittai, right? Ittai. How would you like that name? Ittai. Okay? I could just see a mama naming her baby that. Look at little Ittai. Just a cute little thing. Turn your Bibles to 2 Samuel 15:21. The first two, Joab and Abishai, we know, don't we? Okay, they've been very close to David throughout the course of his reign as king. And this Ittai, we hadn't heard much of him until David exits the city and Ittai joins himself with David. But listen to what Ittai said. And Ittai answered the king and said, "As the Lord liveth, and as my As the Lord liveth, and as my Lord liveth, surely in what place my Lord the King shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will thy servant be. So Ittai, he pledges his loyalty to David, doesn't he? And he says, it doesn't matter whether you live, whether you die, guess what? I'm going to be where you, as the king of Israel, is. So all three of these commanders were very, very loyal individuals to David. Were they, as far as the case of two of them, do we know that two of them were rugged fighting men? Yeah. Folks, Joab had been commander of David's forces, had he not? And remember Hushai? Hushai was the son of who? Zeruiah? And oftentimes, he had been with David, and man, the first thing he wanted to do is what? Kill the enemy, right? Let's get Saul. Let's get this guy. Let's get that guy. You know, when they were exiting the city, remember that man that was wanting to hurt David, that was cursing David, throwing rocks at David? Guess what? Abishai, let me have him. I'll just behead him. I'll take him off your hands right now. Okay, these guys were rugged, fighting men, well-trained army individuals. And the king said unto the people, I will surely blank blank with you myself also. Go forth. Wow. David says what? I too will go forth with you in this battle. Is that good or bad? Larry says dangerous. I didn't ask that, but that's what he said. Is David's desire to go with these individuals good or bad? Folks, it is a good thing. Okay? It is a good thing. See, a leader should always be where? In the front. A leader needs to be out on the battlefield. A leader needs to be the individual who others see. Many of our presidents in days gone by, guess where they often found themselves? On the battlefield, folks. You know that? On the battlefield. And guess what? All it took was them to ride a horse through an encampment, and guess what it did? It encouraged the soldiers, did it not? There's our leader. There's the one who is helping us fight these forces. He's not back off in some hole hiding himself out. He's out there fighting the battle just like we're fighting the battle. And that's the kind of leaders that we need in the church and elsewhere. Leaders do not lead from the back. They must lead from the front. Okay? They must lead from the front. But the people answered, thou shalt blank, blank, blank. Not go forth. Wow. The people understood that this was really a battle between two men, wasn't it? Who are those two men? David and Absalom. Okay. Remember we had been told, well, it was Ahithophel said, that David was the soul of the people. Remember that? David is the soul of the people. If you slay David, then guess what? It's over, right? And if you could get rid of Absalom, guess what? It's over as well. Okay, this battle's between two individuals, David and Absalom. And so the people knew that they would be after him. Notice what the people said in this passage as well. For if we flee away, they will not care for us. Neither if half of us die, will they care for us. Okay? In battle, there are some individuals who are more important than others, aren't there? There are some that are expendable, and there are some that what? Are not. When an army hits a battlefield, who are two individuals that the enemy is looking for? Number one, the commanders. Number two, the medics. Okay? Those are the two that they're looking for. Okay? You destroy the commanders, you destroy the medics, it's over, right? It's just over. And so the people knew that this was a very dangerous thing for David, like Larry said a while ago. David was better than how many of the normal people? But thou art worth 10,000 of us. Right there is where individuals believe that there were probably over 10,000 individuals who had now sided with whom? With David. Okay, because they use this figure. You're better than what? If 10,000 of us die. So they've assumed, and again it's an assumption, that 10,000 or more could have sided with David by this particular time. So we've got right now a huge division in the nation of Israel, don't we? We got a big group that's following Absalom. We got a big group now who's following and fighting for David. Okay? And I find it interesting, if 10,000 of us die, doesn't mean much. But David, if you die, it's not good. Okay? It's just not good. Pretty important individual. What is the meaning of the words? Therefore now it is better that thou succor us out of the city. Well, that's a weird phrase, isn't it? You ever done that? You ever succored somebody out of a city? Bet you ain't never done that, have you? But you know what? We do succor people out of the church. Don't we? What does that little word succor mean? We don't use that word much anymore either. Okay, yeah, if you just look up the definition, it simply means help. Help. That's what the word succor means. So put the word back in there. Therefore now it is better that thou help us out of the city. Now, it doesn't mean help us to get out of the city. What does he mean? You will help us from the city. Okay? It's better for you not to go on the battlefield, but to help us from inside the city walls. Okay? Now, were there a lot of different ways that David and whoever stayed with him in the city could do that? Oh, yeah. You know what happens oftentimes? Men get wounded on the battlefield, do they not? And they have to make their way back to a place of safety. Well, if David and his men were watching, they could do what? They could assist anybody that was having to make their way back to the city of Mahanaim, couldn't they? And so that would be one way they could assist. Maybe they hear that one of the forces is having trouble out on the battlefield, and David can do what? David can dispatch a group of individuals to different places in order to fight, in order to shore up anywhere that they might be weak. And he can do that from the city, can he not? David can also hear of all the different things that are happening on the battlefield, and he can make certain that supplies are delivered wherever those supplies are needed at any particular time. So there's a lot of different ways that individuals who aren't on the battlefield can still what? Help. And that's all that they meant by the statement. They could help by staying in the city. And in fact, he'd be a lot more help in victory, would he not, to stay what? Just to stay alive. In where? In the city. Than he would be dead out on the battlefield. True or false? David refused to bow to the will of the people. False. And David the king said unto them, what seemeth you best, I will do. Is there a lesson there? What's the lesson?
Ask for advice, you better listen.
Okay, ask for advice, you better listen. Okay. What's that? Okay, a good leader is a good follower too. Wow. A man that is in a position of leadership got there first by what? Following, hopefully. If he didn't, he's going to be a horrible leader, isn't he? But if he's in a position of leadership, he got there usually by being a very good follower. Okay? And sometimes, folks, sometimes the people that we are leading, okay, the people that a leader is leading, know better than the leader himself. Okay? Just because you're a leader doesn't mean you got all wisdom. You know? You don't become God just because you got a title. Now that's the way some people think, don't they? You know, I'm the king, so I know everything now. No, not necessarily. Sometimes your people know a lot more than you know, and sometimes it's wise for a leader to bow to the counsels of their will. Where did the king stand as the people left the city? Yes, beside the gate. And the king stood by the gate side. And all the people came out by hundreds and by thousands. Folks, there had to be quite a few individuals that had assembled there to fight with David. Now, this next point just almost makes you mad. You know it? What did David command Joab, Abishai, and Ittai regarding Absalom? Unbelievable. And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom. Ugh. Ugh. Unbelievable. That little word gently, did anybody look it up? I didn't ask you to, but did you look it up? Deal gently with the young man. Nobody looked it up? Folks, do I just have to give you every question? Okay. Move softly. Move with softness toward this young man. Huh? In a tender manner. Whoa, 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 wait. Who is this dude? No, he ain't. He is. What has he just done, folks? He's just stolen the kingdom from David. And now he has adhered to the advice of who? Of Hushai. And what was Hushai's advice? Find him in a city and get him in a city and do what to him? Deal gently with him because he's my daddy. Is that what he said? No. He said, kill him. Here is a man who is out to kill you, who has overthrown your kingdom. Be tender with him now. Don't hurt the poor little boy. He really doesn't know what he's doing. Folks, this is one of David's flaws, okay, as a leader, okay. Now, yes, I realize this is David's who? This is David's son, okay, I understand that. And that's what Mary Ann was saying up here, this is his son. But David is also in another capacity, and David is what? He's king. And he has the responsibility of protecting who? Not just his son, but who? The entirety of that kingdom is his responsibility. Okay? And it's unbelievable that David acts in this particular fashion. Okay? Notice, this is what Hushai had said. So shall we come upon him in some place where he is found, and we will light upon him as the dew falleth on the ground. And of him and all the men that are with him, there shall not be left so much as one. That was Absalom's response toward David, taking the advice of Hushai. But notice this. David was not full of rage, hatred, pride, envy, and revenge. He was speaking as a father who loved his son. No father wants his son to die at his hands. Thus he urged his commanders to deal gently with Absalom. Unreal.
But he did the same thing with Saul. He had opportunity to kill him lots of times.
Yeah, the difference though is what? Saul was a divinely ordained individual in power, right? Whereas Absalom has not been divinely ordained. Absalom has what? Usurped the authority of the king. Okay? Two totally different situations. Absalom is not the what? The anointed one. Okay? He's just assumed that particular position. True or false? None of the people heard the king's command regarding Absalom. False. And all the people heard when the king gave the captain's charge over Absalom. All the people. Deal gently with my son Absalom. And all the people hear it. Question. Do the words of a king matter to the citizens? Do the words of a king matter to his commanders? Do they matter to all his soldiers? Yes. Folks, guess what David did? David has just changed the course of this war. Did you know that? By this command. One command on how to deal with his adversary has now changed the course of how all of his soldiers are going to deal with who? With Absalom. If I'm a soldier and I come in contact with Absalom without hearing these words, what am I going to do? I'm going to kill that dude. He's the enemy. He's in rebellion. He deserves to die. But now I hear the words of the king. Deal gently with my little son. He's really a good little boy. Yeah, just flexing his muscles. A little too much testosterone, whatever, And now now I'm on the battlefield. I come right in contact with him, and what am I going to do? I've got to second guess myself, don't I? How am I going to handle him? I guess I jump off my horse and I go and I wrestle him to the ground, handcuff him and bring him back to Jerusalem. But I do that very tenderly. Okay, right? Who's that? Oh no. That's what I'm saying. No, his is what? Death, right? Unbelievable. So he's by this one command, he's changed how they're going to fight this particular battle. And we're going to see that in the course of this, don't we? In what wood did the battle take place? The wood of Ephraim. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go into a big discussion of it, but I want you to go sometime and find out where the wood of Ephraim is. Is it on the east side of the Jordan or is it on the west side of the Jordan? The commentators are divided. Okay? No need to get into that. I don't know that we'll ever have the answer. How many of the people of Israel were slain that day? 20,000. Wow. Where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David, and there was a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men. Here's another indication that this was not following the counsel of who? Of Ahithophel. Ahithophel had counseled how many? Anybody remember? 12,000. Okay, 12,000. There's more than that. Okay? Guys, 20,000 died. That tells me what? There's a whole bunch more out there than that. Right? So again, we get the indication that they are following the counsel of Hushai and not Ahithophel. What devoured more people than the sword, though? Ah, yes, the woods. For the battle was there scattered over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. I've always wished that there were some good, writers and good producers in Hollywood that would take these kind of scenes and make movies out of them. God, let me tell you what, you got some movie material right here. 20,000 guys die, but they're not dying how? They're not dying by the sword. They're dying by the what? By the woods. What's going to kill you in the woods? Ravines, pits, what? Animals possibly? Who knows? But the Bible says there were more died in the wood than were devoured by the sword. What was Absalom riding when he met the servants of David? A mule. And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule. A mule. My daddy, he used to always tell me that he rode to school on a mule. Okay? Not a horse, a mule. Okay? Not a donkey, a what? A mule. So I thought, why did they want to ride mules and not horses or donkeys? Why did you want to crossbreed those animals in order to ride on a mule? And so I looked up a few things. The mule is stronger than a donkey. The mule is sure-footed because he comes from a what? A donkey. Mule is more sure-footed than a horse. A mule is a pack animal because he comes from a donkey. A mule requires less care than a horse. Okay? A mule is larger than a donkey, better equipped for rough terrain. The mule is also a very fast animal because it's associated with what? A horse. You see? You get the best of what? Two worlds. Okay? That's what happens when men and women marry, right? They get gooder children than they are. Because you get the best of what? Two worlds. Okay? Don't you? And that's what happened when you cross these two animals and you get a mule. So these mules were ridden often in warfare. Now, what happened to Absalom when he went under the boughs of a great oak? What did he get caught? His head. And the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between heaven and earth, and the mule that was under him went away. The Bible never, ever, ever, ever says he got hung by his hair. I went back and read it again, and read it again. Now, we assume it was his hair because of what? Because he had a big head of hair, didn't he? Okay, remember every year he went and he shaved his head and they just got a boatload of hair from him, didn't they? Okay? But the Bible doesn't say that he was caught by his hair in the branches. The Bible says he was caught by his what? By his head. Okay? By his head. Thought that was interesting. Who told Joab, "Behold, I saw Absalom hanged in an oak"? A certain man. The Bible, oftentimes, you could do a whole sermon, maybe 2 or 3 sermons on a certain man. You know what? I don't know if he's the same man all the way through, but there's a certain man found in the Bible. Okay? A certain man told him. What did Joab say the man should have done to Absalom? Why didst thou not smite him to the ground? I wrote this down. Absalom was a rebel. Absalom was given into the man's hand. The natural thing to do as a soldier was to what? Kill him. That's what your enemy is. Look here. Oh boy. Watch me have some fun with this guy. Right? He left him. Goes to Joab. Hey Joab. Saw Absalom hanging in a tree. What did I say a while ago? The words of David changed the course of how the soldiers behaved. Didn't they? What would Joab have given the man if he had killed Absalom? 10 shekels of silver and a girdle. Which was more valuable to the man? The girdle. Folks, the girdle was part of your fighting equipment. Okay? You remember when David slew Goliath? He comes back and Jonathan endears himself to David. And one of the things that he gave David was his fighting girdle. Okay? Places where you can hang swords, knives, and other pieces of equipment. A very, very, important piece of his fighting uniform. In today's dollars, 10 shekels of silver would amount to about $125. Ooh, gonna get rich. Okay. This man would not have killed Absalom for how many shekels of silver? Wow. Though I should receive 1,000 shekels of silver in mine hand, yet I would not put forth my hand against the king's son. You could give me $12,500, and guess what I wouldn't do? Wouldn't have killed him. Why? Why? For in our hearing, the king charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, beware that none touch the young man Absalom. Folks, commanders have to be careful what they command, don't they? They influence the behavior of their followers by the words that they use. And David did on this particular occasion. Otherwise, I would have wrought blank against my own life. Falsehood. That little word falsehood is interesting. It is defined as a vain thing. Okay, a vain thing. A fraud, a wrong. Okay, had he killed Absalom, guess what? He would have had to have dealt with two people. Number one, who? The king. And number two, who? Joab. Okay? Folks, were fighting men back then fickle individuals? Oh yeah. You know? It's okay for Joab to do what? Take the life of Absalom by putting 3 darts into his heart, right? And having 10 men of his who are his armor bearers fall upon that body and devour it as well. I would hate to have seen Absalom's body after they finished it, wouldn't you? Bad enough, he got 3 darts in his heart. Much less 10 more individuals fall upon that body to slay it. That's okay, because it's who? Joab. But if that young man had slain Absalom, goes to Joab and tells him what he's done, Joab may have said, what? Can't believe you did that. Why'd you do that? King said don't do that. And now that you've done that, guess what? I'm going to have to take your life. The young man knew even if that didn't happen, who would find out? David. Folks, especially in a war like this, when it's 2 men, father and son, son dies in battle, do you think there's going to be an investigation on how that son died? Oh, yes. And here I am, a little soldier in the battle who heard, you're not supposed to hurt Absalom. I put him to death, and now the king finds out. You don't think I'm going to stand before the king and give an account of my actions? Oh, yes. I will give an account of that. And this young man knew that, didn't he? Okay? I skipped over a ton of stuff by telling you all that stuff. Once Absalom was buried, what did Joab do? I mean, not buried, but once he was killed, what did Joab do? What was the first thing he did, though? Sounded the trumpet, did he not? The battle is what? The battle's over. There's no need for anybody else to die. Folks, this is a battle between who? 2 men. Absalom and who? David. You kill either one of them, it's over, right? They buried Absalom in a pit, and what did Absalom build for himself? A pillar. What did he call it? Isn't that great? Build your own pillar and call it by your own name. Why did he do it? I put my last point. Absalom offers little in death. He's buried in a pit in a wilderness, far away from the city of Jerusalem. And the only thing that he has left to his name is a pillar standing that he erected with his own name on it. Wow. What a memorial to a pretty evil son, wasn't he? Guys, keep reading. It's going to get gooder and gooder. Gooder.